About 13 years ago, my pastor, and I believe in pastoral authority, said, you need to pray about a God and country ministry. Knew my background, that I grew up right outside of Washington, D.C. I started going into Washington when I was 12 years old. As a teenager, I would sit in the committee hearings and listen to the senators and the congressmen as they debated different legalities and laws that they would be setting that we needed to follow. When my pastor told me that, I prayed about it for one night and told him the next morning that's exactly what I believe God would have me do. Now, he didn't tell me exactly how to do it. He tried to give me some advice, but he knew that I needed to get before God upon my face and ask him for direction, to which God did. He gave me a 5-point premise to get people educated as to who we are once again, get people engaged in the process in a biblical way, to entreat God's mercy upon our country, to occupy till he comes, to encourage others to do the same, so that we can continue to evangelize the lost, holding fast the civil liberty that we've been entrusted with in this country, so the spiritual liberty in the Lord Jesus Christ can continue to go forward. So I started. Many of our brethren didn't understand what I was trying to do. They thought this was another moral majority. I said, it's not an organization, this is a ministry to try to help pastors and their people to understand that we have done something for decades now, and that is we've forgotten that we do have a biblical role, as the Bible clearly indicates all the way through. As the Lord Jesus Christ himself said, render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's and unto God the things that are God's. Talking about a duality of citizenship, that we are citizens of this country and also citizens of our heavenly home in our King, King Jesus. 2010, we met with John Ashcroft. I asked Brother Creed, along with several of the pastors, to come with me, and a few other fellows that were involved in the coordination of this meeting asked pastors to come with them. We sat down with John Ashcroft, former Attorney General and a good Christian man. And he said this, you want my take on America, where we are socially, economically, in our foreign relations. Here's my take. We have a spiritual problem. And we plant churches all over the United States to preach the gospel, and so we should. And we send missionaries all over the world to preach the gospel, and yes, we must do that as well. But you understand, unless we start reaching into the capital with the gospel, very soon we're going to be fettered, hindered, in trying to reach out towards our country and the world with the gospel. He said, we need missionaries to Capitol Hill. Well, God touched two hearts in that meeting. It was for the Creeds and mine. I didn't know it at the time, but we started talking with one another. And for the Creed pastors of the Independent Baptist Church just outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. A lot of times people have asked me, Brother Harding, how can a man be called as a missionary to government? I always like to answer from a biblical standpoint. In Acts chapter 9 and verse 15, the Lord himself, speaking to Ananias concerning Paul, talked to him about Paul was called to 3 people groups as a chosen vessel to bear his name. And it says, but the Lord said unto him, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me to bear not my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. So right there, Paul was instructed by God and to Ananias as well, that he was called as a missionary to government. And so I suppose if Paul can be called, others can be as well. We've seen some amazing things happen. From the first time that the men came with their people, their wives, and some of their people of the church, that first year, 2013, we saw doors begin to open. We saw our office opened up to us. We have an office right on 2nd Street across from the Supreme Court there in Capitol Hill that was provided to us at a very reasonable price in comparison with the other offices. We had a sit-down meeting with the first faith liaison ever hired by the Republican Party, Chad Conley. And he asked us what we needed to do, what he needed to do to get the people of God back into a political realm. specifically, of course, in his interest, the Republican Party, and specifically to us, the Independent Baptists. And I said, you want us back at the table? We are at the table. He said, I don't understand. I said, look, Independent Baptists, we are pro-life, pro-traditional family. We are pro-Israel. We are pro-Second Amendment. We are pro-free market. We are pro-Constitution. We're at the table. Republicans have factions that are trying to drift and have drifted from the table. He looked at me and his eyes got real wide and he said, you don't mince words, do you? I said, Independent Baptist. He went, oh, okay. I said, now what are you going to do with that information? He said, I'm going to go right over. I'm going to tell the chairman of the RNC. I said, good. I said, let me tell you something else. Right now, there's factions that are trying to bring you to the left, to placate the different factions of those people that have decided they want to follow alternate lifestyles opposite from the traditional family. Those people that want to placate the socialists and the abortionists. You do that, if you ever do that, you'll never see the White House again, because all you will be is a bad imitation of the liberal party. Well, again, his eyes got wide, and he said, I'll go over and tell that to the chairman, which he did. And you say, well, what does that do? How does that influence pan out in something that is tangible? Well, I have a little document right here. It's just an excerpt from a over 50-page document from the Republican Party. It's the most biblical, constitutional, conservative platform in the history of the United States. And Chad Conley told us the reason why this is because of our interaction with him during that breakfast meeting 5 years ago. I don't take any credit for it because I know the only reason why we had that meeting was because pastors came and continued to come these last 5 years in amazing amounts. The first time in history this has ever happened. This is unprecedented, what the Lord has allowed us to do. It was and is his doing, and it's marvelous in our eyes. But we see something that is very unique. The Baptists, which I believe are the Marine Corps of the Christian movement, are moving into Washington, D.C., and once again, like Aaron and Hur, holding up the hands of those people in leadership. As Aaron and Hur held up the hands of Moses, because there were two battles going on, a national battle in the valley being waged, and a spiritual battle also. That's what's going on in our country as well. And just us showing up has given those people the wherewithal to start standing up for example, the life of the unborn. We had a prominent senator that stood in a very conservative meeting and said, a little over 4 years ago, not many congressmen were actually standing up for life, the life of the unborn. Then something happened. He was looking at Brother Creed. He said something happened, and now, today, many, many congressmen are standing up for the life of the unborn, and we're going to get something done. By the way, in their platform, they say they want an amendment to the Constitution to protect the life of the unborn. How does that equate to, again, the agencies that we see? The Department of Health and Human Services, since this last election, has changed their official position on life. And they have stated openly, officially, we no longer believe that life begins at birth. We believe now that life begins in the womb. I don't know about you. That's something very exciting. And we see this president doing things that we haven't seen a president do in a long time, and say things that I believe many of us have wanted to say, and some things that we have never wanted to say, but we won't go there. What I'm saying is, we have seen God open some very unique doors, and the Capital Connection is something that, again, is all God. We take no credit for it whatsoever. To him be the honor and the glory, but we've never seen this happen before. We have an after-hours tour as well, where I'm your tour guide through the Capitol, which is, you might say, a museum of how God has so miraculously blessed this nation. It is the most recognizable edifice in the world as it pertains to the United States of America. And at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, and they've allowed us to lead hundreds of people from the Capitol Connection onto the Capitol grounds, and through the Capitol. There's always a congressman with us. And the first year I asked the secretary, I'd like to do one. She said, how many would you like to guide with the congressman? I said, 125. She said, well, Dr. Harding, that's never been done. I said, well, please ask the Sergeant of Arms. Maybe he'll let us. She came back, and she's a very gracious lady. She said, I can't believe it. He's going to let you lead 125 people onto the Capitol. The next year, she said, how many would you like to lead onto the Capitol this year? I said, 275. She said, well, that's never been done, Dr. Harding. I said, would you please ask the Sergeant of Arms? Maybe he'll allow it. Again, she came back. She said, I can't believe it. He's going to let you lead 275 people onto the Capitol. I said, I'd like to do it 2 nights. The third year, she said, how many would you like to lead onto the Capitol this year? I said, 335. She said, okay. It's a relationship of trust that we are building with the people on Capitol Hill. And now we're allowed to go right down to the floor of the House of Representatives and sit where they sit. In fact, this last March, a born-again independent Baptist representative whose dad pastors an independent Baptist church from his state said to me, Dr. Harding, would you have the people pray? We were close to 400 people that night, almost filled up the entire house. Would you have your people pray for the elected officials that will be here tomorrow, my colleagues, as we debate these things for our country? I said, I most certainly will. So on the House floor, I asked them, would you please pray? The congressman would like us to pray for the people that will be sitting in your seat tomorrow. Everyone simultaneously stood up, turned around, and knelt. And the congressman was bowled over. He didn't expect that. I said, this is how we would like to pray, on our knees before God for these people. We've been invited now to value action teams on both the Senate and the House, where Brother Creed and I sit with those people that you see on the news many times, look at them in the face, and we basically strategize on how to keep our liberty free. We also attend a luncheon every week, a very prestigious conservative luncheon that we have to be invited to. You can't just show up at these meetings. You have to be invited to these meetings, and then you're vetted so that they ensure they know who you are. Well, God has given us great favor. That door that has opened has been an effectual door, and we just continue to walk through it. And so we ask you to join with us in prayer, and if so be, join with us in the Capitol Connection whenever you can. And Brother Sexton, thank you so much for the time.